I'd like to welcome you all to the Chamber of Commerce House. And I would like to special thank you to Commissioner Robinsson and to Heather Bremel for being here and coming today to talk to us in this very special, very unique seminar about exporting consumer goods to the United States and the standards and requirements in this regard, which I'm sure occupy a lot of people around people here's times and concerns. I know that there's a lot of interest towards this issue, and it should. And what we would like to have today is an open discussion and have as about their challenges, about the topics that they would like to raise if they may. And I'm sure that they will have a very immediate response. So I'm sure that I don't need to say how much the United States is an important trade partner for Israel. It's actually the second largest export destination after the EU and number one as a single country. 27% out of our total we import, actually economic-wise, we can export, that we can use the markets and benefit from the great economy of the United States. In terms of consumer goods, because that's going to be the main topic of today's discussion, around 10% out of the total of goods Israel exports to the world is consumer goods. It's about $4.2 billion. And the main branches, the main sectors are food, that I'm not sure that we're going to cover today, jewelry, textile, cosmetics, and home products and family products. The United States imports about 31% out of this total amount. It's about $1.5 billion in 2016. And the numbers are growing. Our exports to the United States has grown about 4% last year, and we can see that there is definitely a growth in the export to the United States, even though that there are a few sectors, mainly pharmaceuticals, that have declined in recent years. We have made this seminar possible thanks to our partners in the chairman, and this is the time to acknowledge and thank Oded Rose, the CEO of America-Israel Chamber of Commerce, and Ariella Ashkenazi, his deputy, who've always been there for us in almost every event that we're doing with the United States. They're there, and we're doing that in a great collaboration. So I would like to thank you, a very important organization who's helping Israeli companies to do business in the United States. I'd like to also thank Naama Myers from my team, business development executives in charge of the U.S. market, who is there for you if you need any assistance with the U.S. market. And also our Ministry of Economy, who assists us very much. And last but not least, I would like to thank the companies who came here in the afternoon to the middle of Tel Aviv, where you have no parking because of the subway, for hearing us today. And I'm sure you're going to find it very interesting. I'd like to pass on the mic to Oded to say a few words, and then we can go on and start with Commissioner Rovenson's presentation. Here we go.
It's always great to speak after Zev because there's very little else you need to add. My name is Oded Rose, and the Israeli-American Chamber of Commerce mission is to promote and strengthen the already strong, by the way, trade relationships between the country. Welcome, Commissioner, and Heather, welcome. Heather actually lived here for a few years.
1 year.
So you speak some Hebrew.
Very
So we're very pleased that you came. There are quite a few companies in our chamber that export to the United States, or 2/3 actually of our companies. And it's a very important topic. I'm sure we're going to have a very interesting meeting today.
Great. I'm just going to introduce you very quick, but before that, I forgot that it's Happy 4th of July. We haven't said that, so Happy 4th of July. We had the privilege, all of us here, to also participate in the 4th of July celebration in the Ambassador House, which was great. And you could see indeed the power of United States and Israel by the participation of our Prime Minister, President, and actually all the top leadership in Israel. So that is great. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Commissioner Robinsson, which is the Commissioner of the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission. She was nominated by the former President Barack Obama, confirmed by the Senate, and officially sworn in 2013. Ms. Robinson practiced as trial attorney for 35 years, handling a wide variety of complicated legislation. She is a fellow of the International Society of Barristers and serves as its first woman president. She is the fellow of the American Bar Foundation and Michigan Bar, and in 2000 she was the Democrat nominee for the Michigan Supreme Court. There is so much more to say, and I'll let you say it, so thank you very much for coming again.
Here this past week, but I want to start by introducing Heather Bramble, who was the person who really put this together. I was sworn in 4 years ago, and I think Heather came. Heather had been a partner at a major Wall Street firm for a little while to have babies, and I convinced her to come. Just really enjoyed it. Our week here in Israel, I was telling Oded that we really chose this. Heather and I went a couple years ago to China and sort of focused on the manufacturing and testing end of things. And here in Israel, believe it or not, some of the Israelis have found focusing. The second area has been on how much of our challenge now is in the technical area, and there are so many things coming out of Israel, both in terms of the development of products that start with the technology here, and also we've been poking around like at Tecnion to see if we can't find some people who can help us solve some problems. I need to say, and I absolutely hate today, I'm just saying on behalf of myself, I'm not. So let me, especially with the way that people are shopping now and with online sales and so forth, and if you look at the marketplace in the U.S. today, 4 times as many of our goods are imported as were just 25 years ago. And I'm sure that that's true in Israel as well. And then when you add to that the complicated global supply chains that everybody has, the regulator's job in this space becomes ever more complicated. And I think all of us, in just reading a couple of basic facts about the recent disastrous, tragic fire in London that took so many lives, the last count I read was 79. But you looked at 2 products there, and I'm sure there were a lot of regulators asking, what does my country do about that? One was building materials and the flammable outside of the apartment building. But the second thing that we really looked at was the refrigerator, because the refrigerator that started that fire had a plastic flammable back that we don't allow in the United States. They have to be metal. And so, you know, England's been the UK's been very good at, I put quotation marks around that, but doing away with regulations. But, you know, the question becomes for all of the countries that have regulations, you know, when have we gone too far in trying to deregulate things? In my country today, I am not going to say much about what's going on in my country today. I'm sure it's been the subject of many conversations with people in this room, but we have a real anti-regulation fervor going on. It is the powers that be are trying to get our agencies with little thought. If you're going to pass a regulation, so we're going to let, you know, in children's toys, if we're going to pass something to emit less products have lead in them, I mean, you know, it just makes no sense. But I think that it really can lead to some making the product safe as well. So let me just say a word about what the CPSC is, because a lot of people have never heard of us. We were at Tecnion, and one of the people we spoke with just looked at it and said, does anybody even know who you are? And I can tell you that before we recalled the Samsung phone that was exploding all over the place, Samsung, I don't think, knew who we were. So let me just tell you a little bit about our agency. We are an independent agency. We are very tiny. We were created back in the early 1970s. And we were created through the Consumer Product Safety Act. We only have about $123 million budget, and we have about 550 employees, and we'll tell you everything about what our emphasis is. With that tiny agency, this is our assignment. We are basically responsible for the safety of all products, all consumer products, except for food, drugs, cosmetics, and automobiles. And then we always like to throw in guns, because we sort of think if we can make teddy bears safe, we should be able to make guns safe, but Congress has told us no. We do have jurisdiction over gun locks and gun safes. So So we're working on that, what we can do. So the agency in 2008 has a joint effort between consumer groups, industry, whether it's manufacturers, retailers, importers, hopefully expert scientists, all those people around the table coming up with a, so no matter who the president is, if there's a Republican spot, they have to appoint a Republican. I was a Democratic spot and I was appointed by President Barack Obama. Once you are nominated by the president, then you have to go through Senate confirmation and have a hearing and so forth, and then you're sworn in as a commissioner. And our mission is really, in a nutshell, to keep American consumers safe from unreasonably dangerous products, which will become relevant in a moment when I talk a little bit more. For any of you who don't know, is still catching on fire, so we're trying to figure out whether in fact we should continue with the repair or if we should require a full recall. But we really work with the company in figuring out how to get the product off the market if it is dangerous, and don't know if they want to recall the product. We'll find, I think it's over to recall the product. So that's why we always ask people to err on the side of reporting to us. Because it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be recalled. Sometimes we force recalls. We forced a recall through, or we're in litigation right now with respect to the tiny little rare earth magnets that were desk toys. I'm not allowed to use company names, so I won't. But some of you may know it. But it's sold in magnet sets that there were hundreds of them. And the problem with them, as long as it stayed on an adult desk, it was fine. But the problem was that some of them were stray, or kids were making jewelry out of them. And when kids would swallow them, they were 8 times the strength that's allowed in the magnet of a child's toy. So if a child would swallow more than one, they would cause the intestines to clamp together, and that cuts off the blood supply. The first symptom would be vomiting. They go to the emergency room. No doctor is going to do an x-ray because of vomiting with the child, and so they would be sent home, and we were ending up, the pediatric gastroenterologist came to us and said, you've got to do something, because we were ending up with kids having dead bowel and having to have massive resections and some deaths from these magnets. So we forced a recall on that one. We also monitor our ports, which is relevant to everyone here, and we've really come up with a pretty darn good system for it, because we're really limited in the number of people. We work with Customs and Border Patrol, and they love us and we love them. We make them look good when we find a bad product, and so they really work with us closely. But we've come up with an algorithm that is working really quite well in terms of the products that come into our port. We start working with the bill of lading, and we figure out which shipments need to be searched, where there's a problem with potential non-compliance. And we were just told of someone who had here in Israel who had a shipment stop, and they were very impressed that they spent many years never had a shipment stop. But with respect to that shipment, they had changed something about it, just in terms of the content that they usually shipped. That obviously set off a red flag in our system. It was examined, they were fine, products were released, but our system is getting better and better with respect to monitoring our ports. We participate very strongly in the voluntary standards process. Congress has made it very difficult for us as an agency to pass a mandatory standard unless it's a child's product, which I'll talk about in a moment. But a mandatory standard literally takes years. I'm not exaggerating to say sometimes decades, because it's very hard. And we have to do a cost-benefit analysis that is way beyond anything required. And then once the standard's passed, we're always hoping with a voluntary standard that it will become good enough and there will be enough compliance that then we can do what's called deferring, which makes it a mandatory standard for all intents and purposes, and then we can monitor products or police them at the ports. But if it's not, if it's just a voluntary standard and we're not satisfied that it's safe enough or that there is compliance enough, we still use that. You here in Israel have a problem with the kids with heat strokes in the car. I saw the fabulous video that the chef did with cooking the pizza in the back seat that was just so effective. I've sent it to our communications director to see if we can't do something like that. But whether it's teaching kids to swim for pool safely, we also have a real problem, and I know this is worldwide, with respect to unstable furniture that's tipping over on top of children. So we're trying to do educational campaigns for parents, grandparents, day school centers, and so forth on that. And we're really trying to engage our global stakeholders, whether it's manufacturers, importers, NGOs, and so forth. We would love to have more of an international cooperation with respect to us trying to come up with voluntary standards and you having input to what the standards become in our country. And there are all sorts of really easy ways to do that. So let me, I don't want to go on too long because I want to have time for questions and answers, but let me just quickly say that I've spoken a little bit about our recalls. The areas, one of the areas that we're having a real problem with that we're taking a look at, and I'm throwing this out, this is a bit of a non sequitur because I'm jumping to love batteries that are in the phones. We also, we've been working with the window blind industry to try to come up with cordless blinds, and then we just had a window blind explode because it had a lithium-ion battery in it. So we're trying to figure out ways to make those batteries safer, and there really aren't standards yet. We're still working on those. So the companies, let me go back to talking just a little bit more about the voluntary standards process, because we did spend some time with the Standards Institute of Israel yesterday learning about the standards here in Israel and how they're developed. And our process is very different. The ASTM, UL, ANSI are bodies that are separate from the government. We try very hard. When I was a litigator, I knew about the standards that you introduce in court as evidence of negligence or knowledge that somebody should have, but I had absolutely no idea what went into the process. And each of these bodies has a different way of putting together their committees and making sure that they have the right input. We try very hard to keep some of the committees from being overtaken by industry, because we want very much to have it to be a very balanced committee, and for people who have technical information, for them to actually participate in these standards, as opposed to when it comes out having to deal with a standard that doesn't make sense for a reason that they don't even know about. So I really encourage the people around this table, if there are products that you're particularly concerned with, standards you're particularly concerned with, find out what's going on with respect to the standard. If there's something wrong with it, either let them know or let us know, because we work with them. And I'll tell you an example. We have been looking at the gun locks and safes in my office, because the standard is 12 years old, and as everyone around this table knows, the technology has advanced so much even in the last weeks and months, let alone the last 12 years, and the standard doesn't cover anything close to what we have out there that could be protecting children, especially from these unintentional deaths. So we looked at the standard. We in the next process, in terms of allocated resources at the agency, we got the other commissioners to agree to have our people look at the standard and decide if it needed to be reopened. I'm virtually certain that within the next few weeks we're going to be recommending that it be reopened, but I picked up the phone and I called the guy who's the head of ASTM, and I said, I think we've got a problem with this standard. His immediate response was, we just reaffirmed that standard, but it was done without any discussion with anyone other than the manufacturers of guns. And I said, well, that's a problem. He said, I agree. He said, send us a letter, we'll reopen the standard, and we're gonna start looking at that. And so we can do that. So it's something that I would love people, if there's a problem with the standard, let us know about it, or let the body know about it, and participate in trying to get it so that it makes sense. There are a lot of different ways in which the CPSC can work with people like you sitting around this table. We're a strange government agency, and I appreciate that. Nobody from, I'm guessing, from the FDA is going to come to you and talk to you in the way that we do. But we really, because we're so small and because we have such limited resources, we really work hard at making sure that we're working with industry. We also know that whatever we decide will heavily impact not only the largest corporations of the world, but small businesses that may even be one person. And we want to make sure that we're doing things that make sense. So we have a number of ways in which you can work with us. One is when we are in the process, and everything's on our website in terms of what we're doing, but when we're in the process of considering a mandatory rule, we publish what we're considering doing. Then we invite comments, and we have a comment period, and I can tell you that we take the comments very, very seriously. And this is a very egalitarian process. We don't care if you are the largest corporation in the world or the tiniest one person. If you say something to us that our staff decides, yeah, that really needs to be addressed, it will be addressed. And it all comes to the commission and in the next round of whether we're going to pass that standard. We also have what's called priority hearings, and you may participate in this by submitting writings, or you can even arrange to participate by telephone. We do that with distant stakeholders all the time. Our next hearing's on July 26th. When I first joined as a commissioner, I believe the first hearing that we had was a priorities hearing. I had no idea what it was. This is my first government job. I was, what is a priorities hearing? It was only later that after the hearing, that I really came to appreciate. People come to us and they tell us in writing or in testimony what it is that our commission should be focusing on and why that should be a priority for us in terms of allocating resources. And we really listen, and that's something that the public very much can participate in. We also have, we also hold workshops all the time. Everything's on our website, but there's a workshop, for example, on July 25th that we're doing on recall effectiveness to see if there are ways that we can improve it, because we realize that we've been less than fabulous about being effective in some of our recalls. We also, we are the most accessible government agency you will find in the United States. I have meetings with people all the time. And if you want to talk to a commissioner about something, it doesn't mean you get to talk to me in secret. We notice that you're going to be talking to me. Other people are invited to participate if they want. But it's open unless you're sharing proprietary information, and then we can arrange for it to be private. But any of our commissioners that you want to talk with, all you have to do is contact us, and we will arrange a meeting. And you can do that via web. And all of our meetings are public. We have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel, and it's all very public. We really have tried to focus on outside on imports a lot, given the fact that 4 out of 5 of our recalls are of imported products. Now, they're not manufactured in Israel, but you start doing the leaps to a lot of the companies that are here in Israel, obviously manufacturing in Southeast Asia, and so it comes in that way. So we really are trying to involve the international community. We also have something that is fantastic, someone I should say, Shelby Mathis is her name, and Heather and I can give you this information, but she's what we call a small business ombudsman. And she is somebody that you may contact with any question, and she says she's had a lot of calls from 972 country code, so there are people using this resource, but she's really fantastic. She's a very talented patent lawyer, but you have questions as a small business person that we can help you with. She is very much available to you. She does webinars. The webinars are announced on our website. She travels all over the place, so if there's a need for a face-to-face meeting, you can check out what she's doing, and she has a Twitter account. She uses it better than some people in my government. And the regulatory robot is something that we've gotten really good input on. It was set up by the Small Business Ombudsman, and you've got suggestions for us on how we can make it better. That's fantastic. So we're trying to get people early on in the process with products to think about safety. And I was just talking to Odette about the fact that burn through the esophagus, and we can't do anything getting enough electricity to burn through a kid's esophagus. So it's been a real problem. Now, if somebody would have sort of thought, I'm going to invent this battery, and it's going to go in so many products, and people are going to be exposed to it, and kids swallow things. I'm not saying anybody necessarily would have been this smart to think of this, but just to sort of think about the reality of how something's going to be used, they may have before it became ubiquitous, and we had the problem with if we put a coating on, it can't change the size of the battery because then it's not going to be able to be used in all the products that it's used in. And so at this point, we're still trying to come up with a coating that won't chip, but if you even get a pinhole, that's enough to start the damage to a child's esophagus. So thinking about this both in putting together the product and in terms of your supply chain and so forth would be fantastic. I think I'm happy to answer questions, and I thank you all so much for listening today and for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm falling in love with this country.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Commissioner Robinsson. I think that's exciting, and actually, for me to hear about how you deal as an agency, what it is that you do for the benefit of manufacturing industry, I think that sounds kind of a little bit science fiction for us, knowing doing. So hopefully that when you had that meeting yesterday, you shared some of your thoughts. But moving forward, this is a roundtable and an open discussion. We would love for some Q&A, and if I can also ask, can you introduce yourself and say what it is that you do, and go over the export into the United States, etc.